I call this meeting of the Davenport Community School District Board of Directors to order for a, excuse me, a special open meeting. And I want to explain that the purpose of this meeting is really to look at...
Excuse me, sorry. And Dan is participating by phone.
Okay, all right, thank you. And we have Director Gosa participating by phone. We had a meeting a couple of weeks ago that the board had indicated their individual preferences for the Plan A or Plan B, which most of you are familiar with, and it was my interpretation of the consensus at that time that the board intended to support primarily Plan B. It wasn't a vote, but it was, in my interpretation, a consensus. After that, a couple of board members talked with me and said that I was wrong, and a community member also said that I had not given sufficient time to the board members after some comments were made to really understand the consensus. This is a really important issue, Plan A or Plan B, the idea of closing, consolidating, not closing, consolidating a school. And so I decided to hold this special meeting to clarify that. I want to understand where the board wants to go, because we have some really, really important dates coming up. And one of those is August 27th. If we're going to make some of these decisions, we have to make them by that date. And then we also have the SBRC coming up in October that we have to be really careful of what we're going to present, and the superintendent and administration has been working on that. So I just wanted to set the stage for this meeting. I'm going to turn it over to the superintendent here in a second to talk about these, but I want especially the board members to understand that we have to give clear direction to the administration if we're going to ask for anything, because right now my understanding based on that other meeting was that we, the board, told the administration that we did not support a consolidation or a closing of a school, and I believe that's the direction that the administration has been going. If we're going to make that change, then I think it has to be made tonight. It has to be made with clarity, and it would require a vote, I believe, by the 27th. So I just wanted to clarify that before I turn it over to the superintendent.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yes, by the 27th, the board has to give us direction as far as our budget reduction plan, because we have to have our preparation, our package into the SBRC the first week in September. So that really is what's guiding us right now. Realizing we have yet to close our books for 17-18, that's the normal thing. You do that in September. So these numbers certainly could change from that. If the board were to decide, for example, let's go ahead and consider closing a school, you must make that decision no later than 10th of September. That would mean we'd have to have a couple meetings in between where we'd really dig in and look at the comparisons and the recommendations and the options which have been offered to do. This plan before you tonight is from Plan B. Last time, it does not include a school closing, just so you know. It includes the latest information we have from actuary studies. Remember, we had Tim Kearns and Kyle Ray here, and I asked them to redo our numbers based on what the actuary was telling us, and that is that we could only take another couple of years of the holidays, the insurance holidays, and then no more. So there are some changes as we look at this. Remember, this is going to change every time new information comes. No matter what we provide to the school budget review committee. By the time we get there in October, it will have changed. We're going to have to just update it. And they will have the latest information too. So with that being said, let me go over what is called the 5-year budget reduction plan as of August 20th, 2018. This year remains the same, and we have the targets that we have to meet, and we're doing that beginning with this school year. For 19 and 20, last meeting when you decided you were going to do a superintendent search, I reduced the hiring freeze and reduction by $200,000. I originally had $500,000, but that would change because, again, a new superintendent coming in, and the plan was to use one of the current associates, and that's not going to happen now. And the board really needs to wait. If you're going to hire a superintendent, for he or she to come in, and then they will make some changes to their cabinet to get the reductions you need in the future years. We have a plan to reconfigure the teaching delivery at Keystone Academy. Right now we have special education and general education mixed in the classroom, and that's where we ran into the problems with the coding of positions. So we will work this year for the next year where we will have only special education in a room, general education in a room. That won't give us the problem we have of spending special education money on teachers. So that's where those savings will come in. For the SBRC, I've put under their note the district will continue to discuss the possibility of merging in elementary and middle school to realize savings of from $800,000 to $1.3 million. You have to decide if that stays in there. But that would at least give them an indication that although our figures don't look good in the out years, that the potential is there. For the 2021 year, the actuaries are really causing us to change in an appreciable way what our in-balance spending authority includes. So if we look at 2021, there was 2 insurance holidays. I've cut that down to 1 now. And they say that our savings from that 1 holiday in this particular year will be $1,370,000. Also notice the bottom, this includes a 2% insurance holiday increase. And to do that, though, we're going to have to begin changing our insurance plan. And I've showed you by tripling deductibles, increasing out-of-pockets, and increasing co-insurance, and a different prescription plan. So we are beginning to see increases in the amount of money that the general fund is putting into this plan, because for years we have not. And we've done that because we're trying to save money in the general fund. Indeed, we're taking some holidays in the general fund, but that's caught up with us from an actuary standpoint. And that's why you're now going to see in those next 3 years increasing. So in 2021, your ending spending authority is a mere $580,000 into the positive. And then 21-22, again, where we don't have much to reduce, we've got the energy efficiencies, early retirement, by a phase-in of outsourcing and total reductions, and the spending authority is actually minus in those years. And again, it goes back to the actuary recommending that we have an insurance increase of 12% for both the 21-22 and 22-23 years. So those have changed appreciably from what we were looking at last time, where we actually had a possibility of a spending authority positive for 21-22 and 0 of 22-23. But actuaries are what they are, and the SBRC asked that we actually make an actuary study, which we did, and they'll get a copy of it. The last page is some things that I have put down for us to think about, and it's also for the SBRC to think about. And that is, so what are some positive possibilities? There is an opportunity to operationally cost share. New statute, we are looking into that, cost sharing with governmental agencies like the cities and the county. So there's a thin possibility we might get some savings from there. The enrollment might not have a decrease as expected. We might see less than a decrease. If the state should come through a 2 to 3% supplemental aid, We have made an assumption it'll be 1%. That would be in our favor. If we have a favorable health insurance experience and we do better than the actuaries, then that could change, so we wouldn't have quite the increase that we are showing now. And if we realize better outsourcing or efficiency results, then that might have a positive impact. And I've added some other options, and that is we have had an assumption that all salaries would increase by 2% per year. If you had no salary increases, that would be a savings of $1.5 million each of those years. Or if you increase by only 1%, then the savings would be $750,000 for those years. You could increase class size for the third year in a row, and that would save you about $1 million. If you did that by 2021, then the grades would be K1 25, 2 3 27, 4 5 29, 6 8 29, and 9 12 31. I'd like to point out I've taken the title Vision 2020 off this, but I got to tell you, this is not a visionary budget. There's nothing here but me thinking of every possible cut that we can have and putting it down so that, number one, we can in fact have a balanced budget, and number two, that we can get the spending authority we need from the School Budget Review Committee. So this is the way we look tonight. I guess you're going to talk about, do you in fact want this to go forward without a school closing, and or not? And if you do want to go forward with a school closing, again, we need a couple more meetings, and I'd have to plan those a little bit differently and make some solid presentations about the options.
Thank you. And of course, we don't have much time if we're going to do that. I wanted to ask Dr. Tate before I open it up, on your 21-22 and 22-23 representations of the ending balance spending authority being negative, is that consistent with the SBRC's requirements?
No, it's not. They required us to have a positive spending balance in 1920 and then to have a favorable plan for the following years.
So it looks like you satisfied the first half
Right.
of their requirement, but the second half, it appears, is not satisfied by what you've presented. Is that, am I reading that right?
That's true, unless they would see the plans to revisit the closing or consolidation of schools, and that they saw in some of our positive possibilities.
Okay, all right. I don't want to bias the board in any way. I just wanted to clarify that. So I'll open it up to the board. Any comments, Director DeSalvo?
So I'm looking at what we were provided, what was given to the SBRC in March, and you said a lot of that could change. And I'm looking at 17, 18. So we don't have those final numbers yet of what we accomplished in 17, 18 for Claudia. I don't want to put her on the spot.
No, we haven't finalized fiscal 18 yet. We still have had some large bills coming in, mostly related to special education tuition bills, but some of that are non-categorical general fund. So I've been hesitant to come up with final numbers knowing that things are still coming in for fiscal 18.
So do we know, did we reduce FTEs by 20 that we said we would for that year?
In 17, 18,
Yes.
I think nearly. I think we'd already done that whenever we.
Yeah, I think that had been done, but that's some of the information that I have to pull together to
Okay.
submit to the SBRC as part of the exhibits.
Okay. So there are quite a few changes, what I'm looking at, and you said this is kind of a document in motion at point in time and can consistently change, because there are pretty significant changes from what we've given to them based on what we're looking at tonight, and that's a lot based on that insurance holiday change.
It's all
Of it.
based on that.
Okay. Because I was just kind of looking at there were some reduced substitutes that were on one that weren't on another, and I was kind of going quickly line by line. What you gave us tonight, you had $300,000 to reduce substitutes, and it was $500,000 in the plan that was given to the SBRC. So you changed that to accommodate the
Yeah,
insurance.
Well, no, I changed that to accommodate reality. I mean,
Okay, okay.
we gave her our best guess. You
Okay.
got to take what you can, and yeah, so that's a change, and that's reality.
Okay.
It turns out that we're cutting $300,000 out of a budget of $750,000 for our guest teachers. Before, the number that I was looking at, thinking I can take $500,000 was 1.2 million, but that includes all the long terms. We've taken that out. So if you take out all the long terms, what we use for the daily substitutes is about $750,000. So each school's going to have to cut their guest teacher budget by a half.
Okay. Can I keep going? So kind of along those lines, we were given the document that had the personnel reductions plan, but it has years 18, 19, 19, 20, and then 20, 20, 21. Are these any time in those years, or do we know at all when we can say to them, we're going to reduce this, or this change will be made effective this year, or is this just another high level?
Well, I've spread them out over 3 years because we do it by attrition.
Okay.
And so that's what we're looking at. And 1 year it may be more, 1 year it may be less, but the guarantee is that, the
By
list.
the end.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, and then so the meeting that you're having, it's October 9th? Is that the right day?
The school budget review committee that we're having will all be there.
Yes.
Okay.
I said we.
Okay.
It is the 9th, that's correct.
Is it?
Okay. That's all I have for right now.
Is there any other discussion? Director Hayes?
And Dr. Tate, could you please help me with this? With cutting the guest teachers, how does that affect quality education? How will we manage from, I guess I don't even know how to ask it, for if we need them and we've cut them, how does that affect the education?
Well, we're also trying to do our best to reduce teacher absences. I've asked the HR director to put together a plan to incent people to not be absent, so that's certainly one way to do it. We're also looking at the other side and have a plan for habitually absent teachers to see if we can help them, or if there's things which we need to do for them. So that's two aspects of it. And then schools are going to have to do their best to figure ways around the guest teacher. For example, we received, and it was in a national publication, I don't remember what, showing that one of the high schools hires a teacher and puts them in a room, and it's the technology hall, and teachers now will give their lesson plan technology. Every one of our students has technology, and they can take it to the technology hall and do the classroom right on that. So teachers are going to have to do things a little bit differently. They may, for example, a principal may decide if a music teacher is absent, then they won't be replaced. They'll have to do something else instead of music. So none of this is good. And will it affect the quality of education? It will, unless we find some great ways around it, or if we have fewer absences.
Okay. One other question here. From the Plan B previously we had the zero balance, and then to go to the negative number, I guess I'm not totally clear on how all of that took place.
Well, remember when we were last talking, we had our insurance consultants there, and I asked them to go back and do the actuaries and determine if we only took one insurance holiday in the 2021 and none subsequent to that, and that we made plan changes, what would it look like? And again, look at the 12% increase in 2021, 12% increase in 22, 23. And again, that's not me guessing, it's not them guessing. Actuaries are saying, all things considered, their projection is that we need to have those sort of increases. I mean, that's not an unusual increase for health insurance plans. We've gone several years with zero increases because, again, we've been trying to use our budget for the classroom rather than health insurance, and we've had insurance holidays. But again, recollect, we've got to keep, I think it's 18 million in our reserve. That's our target, and this plan does that.
Okay. And my last question here, and I may have asked this, but I didn't remember what your response was for all of them. Can you tell me some of the entities that we're looking at that will be outsourced?
No, because I have sent a letter out indicating we want letters of interest on anything. So if I mention something, leave some out tonight, that's what will go in the newspaper and on TV.
Oh, okay.
So I'm not going to do that.
Okay.
It could be, I want to start with, it could be the superintendent of schools, because in Arizona, they had a way to outsource those positions. Some company hired retired superintendents. They would hire them back to the district, and they wouldn't have to pay benefits because they were getting retirement benefits. So as an example, we'll start with this job.
Okay.
That's every possible job in the district.
Okay, thanks.
Director Beck.
I just had a couple follow-up questions to that because I'm not great with the health insurance stuff. So when it says that there's a 2% increase in health insurance and a 12%, so I understand tripling of deductibles, increasing out-of-pocket expenses, because that means that people who are using insurance more are going to pay more of their money. The co-insurance going from 10 to 20%, that means that the employee will pay 20% instead of 10%, correct?
Right.
So when you say there is a 2% increase in health insurance, what exactly does that mean?
That's for the amount that we consider a premium that we charge to the general fund on a per employee basis. That becomes the revenue for the self-insurance fund. So it's a rate increase. We don't have rates handed to us like from a Blue Cross Blue Shield because we're self-insured, but the actuaries and our insurance consultants help us derive what our premium should be. And we have not increased our premiums that we charge in the general fund since July 1st of 2015.
Okay, so why is it 2% then in 2020, 2021, and then it goes to 12%?
They put together a lot of different models for us to try to show how they could try to even that out, or if we were ramping it up, and because we wanted to try to eke out one more insurance holiday in the 2021 year, they kept the rate low that year, kind of as our last year of trying to reduce our expenses as much as possible and still keep the self-insurance fund funded at the appropriate level, but then had to ramp that up in years 4 and 5.
So even with increasing co-pays, co-insurance, deductibles, we would still have to pay 12% more in premiums because we're not taking a holiday?
Well, it all goes to keeping the bottom line in the self-insurance fund funded at the appropriate level. So as we change our plan design, it's lowering some of our expenses, but the funding going into the fund, they are basing that on needing to be at 100% of expected claims, which is what the actuaries do. We won't know until the year actually happens what our actual claims are. And we've been very fortunate the past few years to have had very good claim years where we've come in a little bit less than the expected. But the actuaries can't and won't put that in because they don't know. They have to go on based on the number of people, the age of the people in the plan, and our historical. They put all that together to determine what the expected claims are for each of those years. They're also factoring in healthcare inflation.
Mm-hmm.
That's just a statistical projection.
Yes. And that's what the SBRC has asked us to do.
So it's the actuaries who are saying it's going to cost 12% or 10% more or whatever in those last couple of years.
Yes.
And we can't raise, say, deductibles or
We,
anything like that.
that's,
We could. but-
that's with an increase in the deductible. Before then,
Again.
the rates they were looking at increasing were more like 14 to 19%.
Okay. But there's a chance that healthcare won't inflate that much, potentially.
Potential that maybe the inflation rate isn't as high as they're projecting, potential that our claims are less than 100% of expected.
Okay. Thank you.
Is there any other discussion? Director DeSalvo.
Dr. Tate, there's a line item on what we were given tonight that says reduced pay for administrators. Is that the furlough day? It's the same exact amount.
Yes, we decide not to take a furlough day. I want them to work every day, so we just reduce their salary.
Right. So that's exact, because it was just the wording was different.
Right.
And then I have one other question. The miscellaneous reductions of 787,000, what is included in that?
Increased rebate from use of purchase cards, reduction in paraeducation tuition. We had a grow your own course that we were doing. Eliminate free employee and family admissions to sporting events. Rebates for electrical bill paying. Increase usage by expanding equipment breakdown insurance program.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Director Potts.
On the 18-19 school year, we're 17.5 reduction in FTEs. That's been done.
I'll turn to those that did it,
That's been done.
gentlemen.
And the administrative reductions of 3. Okay. And the non-certified. So we can take paperwork to the school budget review committee and show them those reductions, right?
Well, that's probably part of what we're going to be presenting.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And I'm sorry, that's all through attrition still?
Hang on just a second here. We've got a couple.
Is-
Director Beck.
I'm sorry, that's all through attrition still?
Those have been through
Okay.
attrition. Part of the problem when we go to SBRC, and this is where Claudia's job is going to come in, is they look at all FTE. They look at the FTE for the teacher leadership courses. They look at special education, and both of those are going up. And so we have to fight very hard to separate those two so we actually will get credit for these. And that's part of where we ran into problems last time we appeared before them. So Claudia's going to work hard so they understand that, and we can separate and get credit for the reductions we made.
Director Hayes.
Now, you had mentioned with the 5% reduction that included rebates. Wouldn't rebates be considered as income versus a reduction?
Are you talking about the
For
5%
18
reduction in department and site
Yes.
budgets? Those don't count rebates. We're just, if they were going to get $100, they're getting 95.
Oh, okay. All right.
Anything else? I got a couple things. I was curious about the 17-18 documents, I guess, and I was wondering when we might get, I understand not having maybe certified, but could we get projected ending balances fairly quickly?
I'm going to work on getting that pulled together this week. We will be doing another check run on Wednesday for next Monday's board meeting. Hopefully that'll capture some of the final expenses, and then
Okay.
I'd like to get a preliminary financial report put together.
Okay, thank you. I wanted to make sure that I understood something properly, Superintendent Tate. When you were making your opening remarks, did you say you were recommending cutting the guest teacher budget by half by half, not 0.5%, but say half of the total teachers, or the half of that total budget per year.
Now, what I was pointing out that the entire budget for guest teachers that the schools can use for the daily absences for the whole district is about $750,000.
Okay.
There's another $500,000 that's used for a long-term substitute. So if someone goes out on a long-term illness, then we pay for those out of the district. But what I have done, each school is going to be given a per teacher allocation. So based on whatever the allocation is for the district, however many teachers they have, we multiply it. That's what they have for the year for their guest teachers.
And it would be up to the principal then to manage that, is that correct?
The principal with the associate superintendents working with them.
Oh, I wanted to make sure, in fact, that we understand. I think that we can't, when we get actuarial studies, I don't think that we have the authority. I mean, we probably have the authority, but I think the SBRC would reject our suggestion that the actuarial studies are not appropriate. I think that we would have to be really careful if they say you're going to get a 12% health insurance increase in 2021 or 21, 22, 22, 23. If we were to say that we think it's going to be a lot less, we'd probably have to have a way to support that. One of the big things when I look at all of this, of course, the current assumption of 1% state supplemental aid, and I'm assuming that you've assumed that for all of the years here.
Yes.
Okay. And that's, who has any idea? I guess it's a fair assumption.
Yes.
Okay. So at the end of 2021, you say this ending balance includes 2% increase in health insurance, tripling of deductibles, increasing out-of-pocket expenses by 2.5 times, and increasing coinsurance from 10 to 20%. And of course, I've been trying to figure out what that represents in dollars per employee. And I've got in my head what I think that represents. And then you said there will also be an increase in the employee share for prescriptions. So in past years, that would be a really challenging issue to debate with our bargaining groups. And it seems, on the surface, it seems really significant when I read all that, and it appears to be all in 1 year. And I think, based on the way that you've represented it, I mean, we haven't had much discussion about all of that, those increases. You're just making the presumption that we would do that to make the budget work. Is that right?
Actually, I was just trying to show an example of what you would need to do to have a budget that had $580,000 positive at the end. It might be more, it might be less, it might be not at all. That's why I didn't put it in the table itself. I asked them to run some figures with those sort of plan changes. And so, yes, the board would have to discuss it and they would have to agree to it. Again, it was just an example of how it might work.
So thank you for the example. Again, looking at it to me, because then that would be a change that would be in effect basically forever if we made those changes in 2021. And then with the health insurance increases in the following of 12% per year in the next 2 years, I would anticipate that there may be additional modifications to the employee contributions for health insurance. Is that a reasonable assumption?
Well, it might be, but you could also look at the more positive side. Early retirement brings more in than we're estimating, and outsourcing would be more productive. Energy efficiencies, if we invest in solar, maybe that'll be higher. So I guess any of these, they're just right now guesses, and we have to just take it year by year as we get to it. The whole idea is to give us and the SBRC an idea that we have an idea looking down the road, some projections, and what would happen with those projections.
Okay, is there any other discussion? Director DeSalvo.
I'm doing some quick math, and it perhaps is wrong. But I'm going back to what we presented to the SBRC and took a total of everything we said we would reduce. And then I compared it to what you presented tonight, assuming we'll still hit the 6.5 million for 17-18. And the totals don't balance. They're not the same.
I don't know what to say. I guess I could take point by point, but things change. We do more research. We find out that maybe we made some incorrect assumptions. So,
but the new plan is less than the original plan we gave to them of savings.
Yeah, and it could be, again, let's go back to the substitutes. I thought it was incorrectly $1.2 million. I said, I can save $500,000 off that. But when I started to check, I realized, wait a minute, some of that's long-term. I can't save on long-term, so I can only save $300,000, not $500,000. We initially said $500,000 for the bell times, and we could have saved that, but we
didn't.
We could not. We couldn't have done that to people. So that turned out to be $300,000. So again, you make the assumption, you make your best guess. As you find out more information, you change.
So are they looking year by year? Like, are they going to go, okay, what did you do, Davenport, in 17-18? Show us how many FTDs you reduced and what was your savings that year. And then we move to what we're projecting for 18-19. Is that how that process will go?
That would probably, because those are reality. So they can look 17-18,
Right.
how you doing on 18-19.
Right.
So that's going to be a part of the presentation we'll make. Then the other years, I mean, again, like we're doing here, how do they see that? They may say, wow, those are some really deep cuts. They've really made some sacrifices. Let's take it year by year and see how it goes. But they have a general plan on the way it will go. They know they can't go deficit, so when they get into 2021, they're going to have to look at some of those deeper cuts. I don't know. President Johansson has a different view. I looked at, hey, they're human beings. We're trying. We're going to do the best we can. The board's going to be there to convince them. So, not sure.
Thank you.
Director Hayes.
With the hiring freeze immediate, is there any reason that there's no numbers for the 18-19 year that would be reflected in here?
Well, we've already hired people. So, what we're doing is if someone leaves the district, that becomes a vacancy. Every vacancy is reviewed by my leadership team. We do that every Monday morning. So we see, do we need to fill the vacancy, or could we move somebody from another position that we don't need and let that person fill that position? So that's what the freeze means. So it'll develop through the year.
Okay.
Anything else? Okay. I haven't heard anybody talk about closing or consolidating schools, and that was one of the issues, really one of the primary issues that caused me to consider having this meeting. It was something that the board discussed a couple of weeks ago, and it does not appear in this plan that the superintendent has just presented. And I do want to understand where the board is on this, because if the board is resolute that, nope, we aren't going to consider consolidating or closing, then we won't do anything. If we're going to do something, we only have 1 week if we're going to consider doing something for the following year. At the end of the last meeting where this was discussed, Director Beck suggested an approach, and I think that was where my interpretation after the meeting was that there were some people that were thinking, well, maybe we should do something. So I want the board to weigh in on this issue, because right now it is not part of this plan, and unless something extraordinary were to happen, it certainly will not be part of our consideration for the plan that will be presented to the SBRC this fall. So is there anybody that wants to weigh in on this issue? Well, I was ready to say, if not, we'll close the discussion. Director Beck.
So I know we have the note in here that we'll continue to discuss that possibility. I guess we're talking about savings ranging from 800 to 1.3. Having the note in here means it's something we could put in at any one of the subsequent years if we didn't do it this year. Is that how that works?
Yes, I mean, again, if you're serious about continuing the discussion, to make sure that's an accurate statement, then the SBRC would say that, okay, so next year they're going to continue to discuss this, and that could certainly right most of these negative balances.
Right. Okay.
If they think like that, I don't know.
Okay.
Director DeSalvo.
It's so hard to make this decision anyway, but we don't have numbers. This is a moving target that we're trying to vote on, and it's incredibly difficult to make a good decision without, and I know some of this is impossible to get, but I don't feel that we have enough information, and I don't know what else I can tell you to get until we can get numbers of closing the books basically, or a soft close of 17, 18 to know where we are, to know what comes next. I'm not in favor of closing a school. I would like to continue with the plan B, looking for ways that we can save money, continuing to do that. However, I don't think that we should ever stop in our efforts of saving money. And if that means looking at a long-term plan, or this would help or that, I'm not sure that we can totally take that off right now, but without concrete numbers to give you to go into this meeting and say, this is what we did last year and this is where we're at going into this year, it's really hard. My quick math had us 34 million on the first plan and 30 million reductions on the second plan. So that's a lot of money, and that's a lot of schools. So I'm still steadfast with Plan B, but I don't think we should ever stop our looking at efficiencies.
Any other discussion on this issue or anything else that's been discussed? Director Hayes.
I'm still not in agreement of closing the school right now, but I do want to leave it on the table that may be an option to consolidate later.
Anything else? So I guess then I want to acknowledge, in fact, Director Gosa, I apologize, I plumb forgot about you out there. Do you have any comments on all this?
I'm not for closing the school. That's where I'm at.
Okay. So my interpretation, and I hope that it's correct, is that the board has again acknowledged that there is a consensus that the board does not want to close or consolidate a school at this time, and there is no provision for it in the future. There is only we might consider it, and that's it. It is not part of the plan that is part of Plan B. It's not part of what the administration is going to be considering, and it will not be part of the presentation made to the SBRC. The SBRC will get basically this plan that shows that we have a negative spending authority balance by the end of 21-22. So I really want to make sure, because I thought that I had misunderstood the consensus at the last meeting, but what I'm gathering is that there are 1, 2, 3, 4 people already that have indicated that they have no interest in closing or consolidating a school. Does that, everybody agree to that? Director Beck.
So I guess what numbers are we actually taking to the SBRC and say, here's what we said we were going to do, here's what we have done? Just 17, 18?
Well, and 18, 19.
18, 19.
The things that we have done thus far.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I know you don't have the final, but I mean, have we in general met the targets that we set, our own targets?
Well, for 17, 18, again, we haven't closed out the books.
Right.
Got to wait and see that. 18, 19, we're on that path to do that.
Okay.
Yeah. But I mean, 18, 19 hasn't.
Well, it has
We've got
technically
energy
yeah.
efficiencies and yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I'm not ready to answer your question yet, Ralph. I need a second to think.
Okay.
I mean, again, original estimates had holidays every single year. Those are out. That changed us appreciably. And again, we want this to be as accurately as possible, and as we've listened to the public, as I listened to you, that's when I've made changes in this thing. So, I mean, the numbers are the numbers. They're our best guess. In some cases, we might reduce more. In some cases, might reduce less. What you're hoping for is the bottom line. Again, we need to close out positive 1920. That is a requirement. And again, I refer you to the other options in the back. Are you interested in looking at those other options where you could save a couple $1 million?
Excuse me, Director DeSalvo. I have to call on Director Mayfield. You haven't said a single word all meeting.
No, I've been listening. I got in a little late.
I understand, but I want to make sure that you're acknowledged before we continue our discussion, if there's anything you'd like to talk about right now.
Well, I naturally would not want to close the school, which nobody wants to. My big concern with closing the schools is what it does in the future to our whole community. The schools that would possibly be closed, we're talking elementaries and junior highs, will still affect our high schools. And we've voted as a group, or at least indicated, that we do not want our high schools to close. But I see when we close schools around a high school, that it's inevitable we will not have the students to go to that high school. So I've said that many times before. I still believe that's the case, and any alternative is better if we do not close schools. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Director DeSalvo.
Is it fair to say this isn't the last meeting, unfortunately, with the SBRC? We'll have to continue to provide updates as this plan progresses. Is that correct?
I'm guessing. I mean, what I would hope for is them to approve the spending authorities, that we can go ahead and then say, see you next year.
And I'm asking just because so many things that we could look into and check into, and your alternative options and things to think about. I think those are all good things that may have to come in play if we don't get what we think we're going to get out of 17, 18, and then 18, 19, maybe we have more. I mean, it's a continuing moving target, and I would hope they would appreciate that we're always going to do our due diligence and looking at how we can save things. This is a high level plan. This is what we're thinking we can do, but until we have the numbers, there's a lot that's going to change.
I want to address this instead of the superintendent for a minute because we've had 3 meetings with the SBRC where they have rejected our plan. And I think presenting a plan where we show that we are anticipating a future increasing negative spending authority is not going to make them very happy. I have been in the meetings twice personally and had to answer direct questions to as they pose them, and frankly I don't have confidence that they're going to say, oh, this is great, you're projecting just going negative, going in the hole in the future. And that's, bear with me,
I'm trying.
bear with me. I'm just saying that's what this plan shows. And it isn't like a bunch of people that want to work with us and help us do this. This is people that have a responsibility to oversee this. And I think that anybody, I mean, if this was your home budget plan for the next few years, I think that any person in this room would say, we shouldn't be projecting a negative $2 million balance in a few years. We should be addressing it now if we can. And so this, and in fact, I will tell all the board members that I've already worked with our board secretary, and you're all going to receive an invitation to personally attend that SBRC meeting in October, because this is a really important meeting. And there are 5 members of that committee. There will be the director of the Department of Education there. Our superintendent and our CFO will be making the primary remarks and demonstrating the plan. But in the end, it will be the SBRC committee members that will be making the decision. And this isn't just a nice, let's see what happens. I think that this is incredibly crucial, and I think that if we don't present a plan that shows a positive spending authority, is not likely to make them very happy, and I suspect it is likely that they will not approve a plan that's presented in the way that this plan is presented to us tonight. So those are my personal remarks, my personal thinking, but it is a board decision, and I think that we can just wait and see. But it's even this meeting coming up, I think we had to ask for this meeting, if I recall correctly, because the next regular meeting, I don't remember, there were some issues between October and December, there was something there. But there are only certain times that we can meet without certain requests. And there were some issues that actually would change between October and December with respect to grants, if I recall correctly also. But I think I'm trying to answer your question, Director DeSalvo, about what's going to happen. We're all guessing. But I'm saying that if I were to bet, I would bet a fantastic amount of money that they would not accept a plan like this. Is there any other
Yeah.
discussion?
Debate. So back to the insurance. We took off the insurance holidays. That seems to be the biggest change from what we've already given them in March to what we're going to give them in October. But we've also proposed that we're going to increase the health insurance premium, out of pocket, all of these things, but there's no addition back in here to accommodate that. So if we're not going to gain anything, then why are we changing their rates and increasing their rates?
If you didn't do that, your ending spending balance would not be positive. It would be very negative. And again, remember, we were waiting for the actuary study to come back. We were making a lot of assumptions and hopes. And again, the actuary study is what it is. And it tells us that even with making those changes and the 2% increase, that that's what our balance is going to be. I mean, we could have Tim come back in and explain it again. Wouldn't mind doing that because I certainly can't do it as well as he. But I've asked the question, and Claudia went back to say, "Are you sure? Is this a net after all that's done?" That's the bottom line.
But there's no line item
Line item for
what we would, how this increase in rates and things would help in insurance. Like, I don't see a line item in 2021 that talks anything about insurance.
yeah. And I thought about doing that. We certainly could, and we could put a line item, and they'll put a line item for the increases, and they're pretty well going to balance themselves out. Claudia, am I?
Yeah, the breakout we've got here is showing the reductions that we're making. So in 2021, we are showing the one insurance holiday, but then the ending spending authority balance, I did adjust in meeting with Dr. Tate today to take into account the additional expense to the general fund that we're going projected to incur because of increased rates. But that's not a reduction, so it's not
on here.
delineated here.
And we could be a little bit more explicit in that and show increases, because I have asked that question. This is a net.
We pulled out 2.4 million, and from that year we were at 3 million reductions, but you don't
Right.
list there what our ending spending authority was. That wasn't on any of the plan that was provided to them in March, which is
Right.
another question. Then why are we providing it now?
Well,
in
they'll figure it
October?
out.
Eventually. So anyway, back to that. So in 21-22, with 2 insurance holidays, our total reduction in spending would be $3,012,500. But now, without that, that's what takes us to the negative. But you would think if we were going to do this change, it would help us a little more than the holiday, but it's not. I think that's what you're trying to say.
True, because of the 12% increase.
I know. But it's not. You would think then if we're reducing the holiday, we wouldn't have to reduce so much that year when we got our total budget that year, because we wouldn't have spent that much. So can't is there a way to, I know we can't put income on here, but that's what I'm saying. It's the offset. We took out 2.4 million, but we're still 350,000 in the hole.
Well, I can try my best to get a better rundown of the explanation of those things for us. I mean, we have document after document after document. It's so full of figures, makes me cross-eyed. So it needs to get simpler to answer this question you're asking. So we'll work on that.
It's really incredibly difficult to say this is the end all be all and this is our Bible for the next 5 years and here we go, when there's so many unknowns. And I understand. I watched that meeting and I saw how that governing body was and their seriousness about our situation, and it is very serious. But I think, as I've said, we would be so wrong to not do our due diligence, continuing to see where we can save things. What can we do? What can we change? How can we be more efficient? And hope for some mercy from them, and that this is a moving target and we have a lot of things in motion and we're trying a lot of things, and hope they would realize it.
Director Beck.
I guess I'm still trying to figure out why there's a 2% increase in premiums in 1 year and then it goes to 12% in the next year. Because to me that seems like a very large jump. And the other thing, sort of following up on Director DeSalvo's question, I guess the whole point of raising deductibles and increasing out-of-pocket expenses is to offset that insurance holiday that we're not taking, correct? So why don't we realize any, I guess I'm still confused as to why we don't realize any savings from that.
Like Dr. Tate said, we have pages full of numbers from the actuaries, from the insurance consultants. Part of what they were trying to help us do by proposing a couple different plan design changes, different levels of deductibles, different levels of out-of-pocket maximums, was to lower the expenses in the self-insurance fund, which then helps offset how much we have to increase the rates, which is the revenue to the self-insurance fund.
The 2%.
The 2%, yes. So it's a balancing act. So in year 3, which is the 2021 year, would be the first year that we're past our current collective bargaining agreements. It would be the first year we could make any of those plan design changes. So and we're proposing, or they're proposing, some big increases in that 1 year to lower our claims expense, which helps offset then how much we have to increase the rates. But then in years 4 and 5, there are no more changes proposed to the plan design, but with the actuary estimate of the expected claims and the health insurance inflation, that's where you've got that bigger jump. So that was reduced in year 3 because that would be the first year of the plan design changes that we could make.
So basically, we're cutting out an insurance holiday because we've been told by actuaries who I trust, that's their job, that it's not a good idea to do that. It's risky.
Right.
But we're not actually realizing any savings.
We are. It's helping offset the according increase we're having from the rate increases. It really became a balancing act in that year 3.
Okay. I think I get it.
Any other?
I will seek clarification as far as maybe we can put it in a table or something to show it more. I'd like to see it too. Thank you.
Any other discussion?
I did have something else, and I can't remember what it is. I just need a second to
Okay.
gather my train
All right,
of thought.
we'll come
I'm
back
sorry.
to you in a minute. Anything else? Just a couple of things. I do want to address the issue of mercy. I don't think that the SBRC is inclined to give mercy. And I'm just saying that from my experience. And that is not their role. And I think they take their role very, very seriously. And I don't think we can, it's not like pleading to a court, please give us mercy. And like I say, I think that the plans that have been laid out by the administration so far 3 times have been valid, good, positive presentations and have been just rejected. And I will never, ever say I told you so. I just want to somehow reinforce the idea that this is real and that I think that it is the board's responsibility to view this as real. The actuarial things, this whole thing of the insurance holiday is something that we've taken for some years, but I hope everybody on the board realizes it's a one-time issue. This is not a budget cut. When we take that one-time holiday, it's a holiday for a month. And that's what it does. It represents, and it's able to offset some of the expenses for that year, but it is not a budget cut. It doesn't go on every year. And that's why the SBRC and the actuaries have said, no, we're going to give you, the SBRC didn't say we'll let you do it 2 more years. They said they don't like it. They think it's wrong. It's actuarially wrong. Get an actuary there. Make sure that the actuary agrees with that. That's what the administration has done. And the way I understand it, the actuaries have said 2 more years and that's kind of it. And you're done. I wanted to go back and address, even though I mean, this issue that these increases in health insurance deductibles, out-of-pocket expenses, and coinsurance, I think is a big, big deal. And I think that we got to be kidding ourselves if we think we're just going to make that adjustment. I mean, these are plans that the administration has put in here to help us get our budget straight. But I would hazard a guess that almost every employee in the district would be upset with us if we went ahead and just did that. And then the whole issue with schools, I understand the district or the board doesn't want to close or consolidate or do anything as our enrollment decreases and our percent of capacity decreases. And I think that eventually the board and the district is going to have to come to grips with, we can't just continue to have too much space and to continue to pay for all of the people that it takes to pay for all that additional space, even in light of decreased enrollment. And I understand that board members can say, well, we got to figure out a way to increase enrollment. That's great. We do. But that in itself, just saying let's do that, it doesn't address some of the demographics that have been demonstrated to us. It doesn't address a lot of things that are going on. And when I've talked to this board in the past about the diversity plan, which was tested last year in the legislature, and if that happens this year, I think it blows this whole plan completely up. And so I simply want to advocate that if the board is not willing to consider closing or consolidating a school, because if we don't make a decision by 27th of this year, that affects next year. And so if we say we won't allow something like that to even be part of the consideration for the plan that we present, even if it's in a future year, I think that what we have said is that, nope, the plan that we're presenting has nothing to say about attendance centers. I just want to make sure that we all are thinking that way. Director Beck.
You segued right into what I remembered I wanted to say. So the thought of closing a school or consolidating and closing buildings, that's a big project, particularly the proposal that I sent out last week, which I think there's no way it could be done on the current time frame. Like, I don't think it's realistic to do that for next year. But it is a feasible, I think, option. It takes time to add on to buildings, to add classrooms, to figure out the logistics, to figure out the feasibility of multiple consolidations versus one consolidation. And so I think it would be perfectly acceptable to put that into our plan, but not 1819, not necessarily 1920, but I think if we're going to do it and do it right, we have to take some time to really look at that. That's a big, big change. That's like a long-range change, right? And so I don't have a problem with putting that into this plan. I don't want to send something that says we have a negative spending balance authority to the SBRC. I agree. They're going to look at that and say, I don't think so. But we clearly are making cuts. 1819, we have cuts we made in 1718. We're making cuts in 1920. So why not then add in our plans for consolidation along with some of this other stuff in the future? But be serious about it. Like, it is going to happen. But it takes time to research that. I guess that's my thought right now.
Any other discussion? I do want to mention that in a roundabout way, one of the SBRC members got a comment back to me. And I won't express that person's name. I will say that it had to do with respect to something we've been working on, which is equality and equity. And the comment that got back to me from one of the SBRC members was that I'm trying to be really careful here because it was a quote, but basically they being the district don't have a problem with equality and equity. They have a problem with decreasing enrollment. And it was a pretty hard comment that came back to me like that, because I do believe that equity and equality are really important. They're moral issues. We've been fighting for that for 12 years or whatever it is. And I agree that enrollment and decreasing enrollment is something that we have to address, but we have not addressed it effectively. But right now, Director Beck, what I've heard from the board is that there is no stomach for closing or consolidating a school in the future, and that will not be part of this plan. So I appreciate your comments. Although you're one of the people that I included in the original count that you did not support closing or consolidating a school in this plan.
May I clarify? Yeah, so I realized at the end of the last meeting that there was a misunderstanding in language, that in my mind, I wasn't thinking in terms of closing. I wasn't speaking in terms of closing, or when I said consolidation, I understand that means closing a building, but I wasn't thinking of it as the same thing as closing a school, if that makes sense, right? So I understand now that my description was closing a school or closing an attendance center because I'm suggesting we shift students to another building, but those buildings would have to be added onto before we can do that effectively. That also provides an opportunity to increase enrollment because we're providing facilities that people want to go to, right? And we're doing it in multiple neighborhoods. It also maintains the neighborhood schools concept. But yes, originally before that misunderstanding, I said, no, I don't want to close a school. But that's why I came up with, what did I say, A.5 or something like that. Because I don't think we can send this Plan B to the SBRC and expect them to not say no. I think we have to consider consolidating some of our schools and closing buildings. But I'm trying to do that without losing the school community. Does that make sense? Okay. That being said, I do still think we need to work on increasing enrollment, but that's not part of this discussion right now.
Superintendent Tate, you have something to say?
I wanted to follow up on what Director Beck is saying. As an example, the board could say that in school year 21-22 that they would consolidate one or more schools, two or more schools at a savings between $1 to $2.2 million. You'd have to make a decision for which schools are going to be closed in the October 19-20 time frame. As has been pointed out, there's a lot of architectural work that has to be done. We'd have to revise the 10-year plan, but it could be done. I just want to at least put that out, following Director Beck, how it would look if the board said so.
Director Hayes.
And if that's something that we would do, that's something that I could support.
Director DeSalvo.
I'm not sure yet that I'm totally in favor of Director Beck's plan. I'm still struggling to understand why we had to add the ending spending authority balance on this plan and we didn't have it on the other one. Sure, they'll catch up to us. I understand that, but I would be in favor of considering in the future. As I've said a million times tonight, I don't think we can take anything off of our thoughts, because when we go in with this looking like it is, we're exposing ourselves and saying, hey, we're going to be negative, and they're going to say no. But I'm not in favor of it immediately. I'm not in favor of the K through 8 yet. I'm not convinced of that, but I think if we need to go back and revisit where we're at that time with our attendance centers, I don't think we can shut that down ever, unfortunately. So I struggle so badly with this is the end all be all, because it's not. I think we're foolish if we don't continue to look at ways to save money, and that we'll have to include an attendance center if we can't get out of a negative spending authority balance. But there's so much unknown in here. We could, heck, maybe we had a really great year when we get the books closed and we're going to find we saved a whole lot more than we ever thought. And that's where I'm hoping year after year will be. But on this plan, as B is written right now, 18-19, we're okay. Not great, but 19-20, we don't hit the negative till 21-22. So again, I think if we need to consider it, it's not immediate. I don't want to say we're going to move to K through 8. I don't want to say we're going to close this school or that school. I'm not prepared to say that. I don't want to close any school. But I think if we ever stop our searching, we're foolish.
Superintendent Tate, was there, did the SBRC make a specific requirement for years 21, 22 or 22, 23?
I would have to go back and see what the wording is, but I can tell you, and again, whether we put it down or not, they're going to figure it out. As you mentioned, a declining, in other words, a negative balance that's getting larger is not going to fly.
And I think that one of the things that, although we can continue to say we want to look at things, I think that the plan is, as I see it, indicating the negative trend, and without having even a statement. Certainly, if everything turned around and we gained 500 students or something in enrollment and things changed, and we might, if we said even that we were going to, our plan was to close or consolidate a school in 21, 22, it would require debate and a decision by August of next year. And I believe that we can't just go to the SBRC and say, you know what, we might do something like that in the future. I suspect that those are things they'll tell the board if the board is there. Anyway, I think we are where we are. Director Beck, you've said you thought it might be something somewhere down the road. Well, I'm trying to recapture what I think you guys have all said. Director Beck.
I would like to put that in the plan. Consolidating schools.
How would you
or
put it in the plan?
repurposing it, what we had before. Repurpose, close an attendance center, repurpose. Put that in again.
The original plan was that it would be in this year. The decision would
But
be
not for
made.
this year. No.
No. But the decision would be made for the following year. Remember that we have all these requirements for timing.
Yes.
So are you specifying a certain time that would be in the plan?
Well, if things are going terribly wrong and we're going to have a negative unspent balance in 21, 22, then we should realize that savings in 21, 22, which would mean it would have to go into our plans in 2021, correct?
It would have to be done in 2021. The decision would have to be done in 19. I think. We'd have to work through the numbers.
I thought if we wanted to do it, if we wanted to realize the savings in 21, 22, we would decide it in 20, 21.
I believe, yeah, and I believe that's
Okay.
correct.
That's what
Right.
I am proposing.
Director-
That's what I'm suggesting.
Superintendent Tate, do you understand that, and does it make sense to the plan?
No, I do. But if we're looking at the grand plan about adding classrooms, we'd have to start earlier than that because that would take a couple years to get up there to that point. And again, that would mean that beginning with this year, we'd have to start thinking about it, looking at it, feasibility studies, including the community. I mean, the community's been asking to be involved, and there'd be a way to set, a committee together to do that. So, but
I realize-
yeah, that timing would work.
Okay. I do realize it would take us a couple years to get to that point where we actually realize the savings, and that's why I'm suggesting we put it further out so that we have the time to do those studies, get the input we need, and this is it's a big change. It's not just closing a building and shifting students around. It's a large change, so it does require a lot of extra time. So I'm suggesting we put it back in, or put that in, to realize those savings later on.
Okay, thank you. Director DeSalvo.
And I'm disputing that because I'm not sure that I'm totally on board with the repurposing and doing K through 8. I think we need to look at that. I think we need to look at where our attendance levels are year after next. But I don't want to put in that plan that we're going to move all of our district to K through 8. I'm not prepared to approve that. I would be in favor of researching it, but I'm not prepared to put it in the plan right now. I think we should say something to the effect of we will consider repurposing attendance center or looking at other things that could include consolidating attendance center. But I don't want it set in stone that we're going to do that because we don't have enough information yet to even say that would work. I'm not prepared to approve that.
Okay, very good. Director Potts, you haven't been talking much tonight. What do you think?
I wouldn't have a problem with putting it in the plan to look at consolidating a school for the 21-22 school year, to have that down in the 2021 plan.
Okay, thank you. And I hope everybody appreciates, I'm just trying to get a sense here for where we're going. Director Goss, are you still with us?
Yes.
What are you thinking?
I'm kind of where Director DeSalvo's at.
Okay, she's a pretty resolute no as far as I can tell. So that's what I put down for you, Director Gosa. Thank you for that. Director Hayes.
I'm okay with the consolidation for 21-22
Was it 21-22 or 2021?
or 2021. I'm sorry.
That's what I thought.
2021.
Okay.
To look at it. 22.
Right. But
Okay.
okay, I want to make sure because I do not want to misinterpret again. Director Mayfield, what do you think on this?
I think consolidation is possible, but I think it's something that we should do when we have no other choice. And so I'm really for putting it off as long as we can.
So I'll interpret your position as no relative to this plan.
Yes, not putting it into the plan and in right now.
Right.
Down the road, we need to leave our options open, meaning if we're backed into a corner and have to, because we have no other choices, because we have not planned and been able to carry those plans out from now until that future time, then I say not put ourselves in cement to where we actually have to do it. What I'm concerned about is, as we've proposed in the past, can we do what we say we're going to do? Have we done what we said at that time that we were going to do? I'm not quite sure we've done that yet. I would love to see what our past 17 and 18 looks like those years, and then we have a little better understanding of what we're capable of doing and what we've done as to what we want to do in the future.
Okay, very good, thank you. And when does the SBRC need the plan, Superintendent Tate?
The first week in September.
So that's about 2 weeks away, I believe.
Right.
And
And you have to vote on it, so the only meeting currently scheduled is the 27th of August.
Right, which is next Monday.
Correct.
And that's the plan right now, is the vote would be next week. And the information, you know, the administration can only provide the information as it's available, as they've already expressed, and we can't just fabricate numbers to facilitate our decision making. And although I'm not taking a vote on this, I am going to say that I support the idea of a future consolidation that could be put into the plan and demonstrated to the SBRC with some sort of appropriate savings. And so the plan that'll be presented next Monday then will be something that's voted on, that the board supports for presentation to the SBRC. And right now,
Four to three.
yeah, I have a majority of the board. I have a consensus that they would support some sort of a consolidation in 2021 for the following year of 21-22. Okay, is there any other discussion on that?
For clarity purposes, could you reiterate, or maybe you haven't, what each board member voted?
The way there was no vote, but
Well, not vote, but
Right,
indicated.
the indication that I had was that Director Beck supported consolidation, and I'm going to say the vote would be in the year 2021 for realization of the savings in 21-22. Is that correct?
Yes, that's
Okay.
correct, and I will still be here then.
And there may be several that aren't. So there's an election for board members next fall, and there will be 4 positions that are up for election at that time. Director DeSalvo said absolutely not. It's something that would be considered but not to be put in the plan, is the way that I interpreted it. Director Potts said he would support the consolidation in the year 2021 with the realization of savings in the year 21-22. Correct? Director Gossis said no. Director Hayes said yes, she would consider consolidation in 2021, realizing the savings in 21-22. Director Mayfield said no, not in this plan. And Director Johansson said yes, he would support consolidation in 21-22 with realization of the savings in 22 or 21-22. Is that
Sounds good.
sufficient? Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Am I missing something, Mary? Oh, okay. All right, thank you. Is there any additional discussion on the issue of any of this? But remember that we have, so pretty much we have absolutely made the decision, unless something crazy happened, we will not be making a recommendation by next week to close or consolidate a school. Because that's when that would be required if we were going to do that part, I believe. I don't remember all those timelines.
Well, you've got all the way up to the 10th of September, but again, I'm not preparing anything, you're not having any
Right.
meetings.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, so we're saying that is, as far as the board is concerned, that is not gonna happen. Okay. We will have a meeting next Monday. Lost track of my notes. But the information that you're preparing, Superintendent Tate, with Claudia, will be done by the first week of September, which is the week after next. And you don't need anything else from us.
No, reminder, there will be a public forum still because there are other parts of this, and that is on the 5th of September, I believe.
Yeah, and I apologize, I didn't have that here. But the 5th of September, and is that at North? Does anybody know?
That's at North. Yeah.
Okay, so we have that coming up at North. Director Beck.
The numbers from 17-18, we will not have those before we get this to vote on Monday. Is that correct? Or will we have estimates?
I will try to
Ballparks.
get you estimates.
Okay, that would make voting
Yep.
a little bit easier, I think. Thank you.
And when you ask that, you're asking for actual versus projected relative to the plan that was presented to the SBRC. Okay. I don't know if there's anything else. We've got those coming up. And then the SBRC meeting, Mary, do you know exactly when that is? Or you'll go ahead and send that out to all board members? Okay, thank you. And I would just encourage all board members to go to that meeting. If you can, it's a great experience. Is there anything else to address in this meeting? Okay, if not, I think I'll just go ahead and adjourn this meeting. Thank you.